Hello, welcome. My name is Kim Speth and I teach clothing construction level 1 and level 2 here at Agoura High School. I also teach an ROP class, fashion design and merchandising, so the students could actually have somewhat of a career path. They can take clothing 1, clothing 2, and fashion merchandising. They also can take an independent study home economics class as well. My background, I've been teaching here at Agoura for 8 years, and prior to that I worked for 22 years in the garment industry as a designer and a manufacturer. I also have a background in textile design. Behind me here are some weaving, a weaving project that my fashion class has been working on. They're learning about fibers and textiles, and they've created some of their own textile designs. So I'd like to give you a tour of the classroom and show you what the courses are all about. I'm going to give you a panorama view of the room. This is where students keep their notebooks and turn in their work. This is my desk. A supply cabinet, demonstration table and more supplies. We also have irons. Students learn how to use an iron. These are our tables. They're professional cutting tables, the same that they use in the industry. There are some projects there on the table. I'll give you a closer view of those in just a moment. More sewing machines over here, filing cabinets and supplies, front door. This is where students keep their backpacks when they come into the room, and that brings us back to where we started. There is a clothing and a fashion textbook, and then I also have a large library of books with other projects and other ideas and things to sew. The students also keep a notebook. It has a table of contents. They're required to get their sewing license before they're allowed to use a machine. There's safety, practice sewing on paper, just practice using thread in the machine and stitching straight lines, basic seams, safety procedures, knowing parts of the sewing machine, all the tools, their project information sheets, practice using the machine again. So this notebook serves as sort of a little sewing manual and a guide for projects that they work on and skills that they need to acquire. We've just finished working on sock monkeys, so students turn their work in here to this tray. I always have a rubric with grading guidelines on it so students know what's expected of them in completing a project. There's a $50 lab fee for the class. Each student will receive a basic sewing kit with all of the tools they need to get started, along with some thread and some basic muslin fabric to practice some of their sewing skills with. The lab fee would also include many supplies like thread, elastic, Velcro, buttons, embroidery thread and embroidery hoop. But the students will also be required at times to go out and purchase fabric for some of their personal projects that they work on. The patterns I get through Simplicity Patterns. These are some of the projects that we do in Clothing 1 and Clothing 2. One of them is a basic two-handled bag. It has a lining and a pocket. We also do a little pencil pouch where they learn how to sew a zipper into a project. One of the favorites here is the pajama pants. They're made out of a cotton flannel fabric and they're very comfortable. Sewing is not just for girls. I do have guys in my class as well. It's a very valuable skill to learn. Students learn to go from two-dimensional to three-dimensional objects, how to start a project, follow through, work on their own to complete a project. The skills are transferable into other areas such as architecture, industrial design, and engineering. One of the projects that we work on is embroidery. They use heat transfers to embroider designs onto muslin fabric. We either make a pillow or a bag. In Clothing 2, we do a reconstruction project. This is a man's dress shirt, a button-down dress shirt that has been converted into a dress. And sometimes my Clothing 2 students will participate in the Agoura High School fashion show. It's in May. We have student designers that create 5 outfits and show them on the runway. When I'm teaching, I always have samples in various stages so that the students can see what the project should look like as they're making them. see the various steps. There's detailed instructions and examples for the students to follow. We have a couple of professional dress forms in the classroom as well, and depending on a student's skill level, maybe in clothing too, they can begin to experiment with making some of their own patterns. I think it's important to be organized, and I try to pass that on to my students. They all have trays where they keep their supplies. We have a couple of serger or overlock machines in the classroom. This beautiful wool jacket is a project that a student is working on. She's been in Clothing 1 and Clothing 2. She's currently an independent study, and she's going to be one of the designers in the fashion show this year. We also have a Bernina sewing machine. It's a simple sewing machine to use. They're really well made, and we were fortunate enough to get some funding through ROP several years ago to replace some of the older sewing machines. At the end of the second semester, students can work on a personal project where I allow them to choose a pattern as long as it's approved by me for sewing. My Clothing 2 students second semester work mostly on independent projects, so it's important that students realize when they're in this class they need to be self-motivated. I hope you've enjoyed the tour of my classroom. If you have any other questions, you can always go to the Agoura High School website and contact me through email. My name is Kim Speth, the last name is spelled S-P-E-T-H. If your student decides to take the class, I think they'll really enjoy it. It's a valuable skill, and they make new friends. I'd like to give you a panorama view of the room. This is where students keep their notebooks and turn in their work. This is my desk, supply cabinet, the demonstration table, ironing boards and irons, student supply cabinet. We have professional cutting tables here. These are pattern making and cutting tables that they use in the garment industry. The sewing machines across the room there. We have a mirror to see how things fit, more sewing machines, filing cabinets and fabric, the front door, cubbies where students keep their backpacks when they come into the room, and that brings us back to where we started.